Beer board is at 5.
Ashley's doing it.
Yes. Do they know that?
I just told Ron and someone told Bob, so.
Okay.
I mean, you turned the air on too, didn't you?
Yes, like an hour ago.
Actually, I may come this year.
Oh, wow. Bring
You
your whole
can
family.
have the VIP tent open?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're under the,
It's that,
What time do you all have?
4?
That's what I've got.
I'm sure you don't have big issues.
didn't tell me to go get his people.
Oh, cool.
He was finishing up.
There you go.
It kind of shows.
The hospital
They
coming in
they
too.
can step off the.
Oh, yes, we do have the hospital coming in.
Finishing up his barbecue soon.
Yeah.
Turn into really old people, really, just like that.
Will I be allowed to be
At first it didn't, so it's on. Ready whenever you are.
on Village Green? Is that okay?
We'll overlook that.
That's probably him right there.
Am I the only one on the beer list? I think.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're the only thing on the beer board agenda.
Glad you could join us, Bob.
All right, we're going to call the Farragut Beer Board for March 9th, 2017 to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Beer permit request. Item number 2, approval of a Class 6 special occasion beer permit for the Farragut Food and Wine Festival.
Yes, sir. The Farragut Business Alliance is a nonprofit organization, and they're requesting a permit for May 5th, 2017. They're also requesting a $100 application fee to be waived as the town is an event sponsor of the event. So the motion is to waive the $100 application fee and approve the special occasion beer permit for the 8th Annual Farragut Food and Wine Festival.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good job, David.
Welcome, thank you for the opportunity to address you.
You have to say a thing.
Well, I usually get grilled over this. Hey, you're all easy. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other business for the beer board?
Move to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
They should all be that fast.
3 minutes until the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. First of all, the mayor is out of town. He regrets that he cannot be here. So as vice mayor, I am going to call the meeting to order for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for March 9th, 2017. First item on the agenda would be silent prayer. Can we all stand, please?
Here we
Here it
go.
is.
It will not be a silent prayer.
Yeah, we'll have somebody that's going to lead us.
Right.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're so very grateful for this day. We're so very grateful for the many blessings that Thou hast provided for us. And at this time, Father, we ask Thee to please watch over all of us today as we come here to meet, that we may be able to know what to say and that we may be able to enjoy each other's company. Please bless this meeting that we may be able to learn from one another and help the city of Farragut in unity. Father, we love Thee so very much, and this is our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Next, we have Pledge of Allegiance. We have two scouts that will lead us, if they'll come on down. The flag's this way over here. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. First item on the, or next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Are there
Any-
any changes?
Any changes from the staff?
No, sir.
Approve?
Second?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item, mayor's report. The mayor is not here, and I have not been given anything to report. Does
Can
the
I
staff?
say something? We had a wonderful, wonderful event Saturday, the Shamrock Dance, father-daughter dance. It was a huge turnout. The dance floor was packed with fathers and daughters having a wonderful time. It really was a nice event. The girls were so cute in their dresses. It really was a nice event that the town put on. And our staff worked very hard to make that Commons place look really festive. So it was a nice event.
That's great to hear. I heard a lot of good things about it myself, so glad it was successful.
Some fathers danced better than other fathers. Daughters danced great.
We have a video.
You there?
I was the father not dancing so well, but my daughter dances great.
For the record, David's daughter is not a party animal, so it's all good.
Next item is citizens forum.
No one has signed up.
Okay, moving along. Approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
I've reviewed minutes and find them in order. Move to approve. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain. I was not here.
All right, next item. Business item, approval of a professional service agreement between the town of Farragut and the AECOM Incorporated for geographic information systems management.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pinchuk. The agreement before you tonight replaces an existing, a previous agreement for GIS services. This agreement is virtually identical to the previous agreement in form and language and content. And the overall cost to the town will not substantially increase. The agreement was formed to be open-ended, so if we need to get out of this contract, we can just give them 30 days notice and get out of it if we need to. And I think this agreement's necessary for us to continue our GIS services. So basically, in short, it's a replacement for an existing contract because the former company could no longer provide the GIS services. So we're just replacing an existing service.
I have a question.
Wait a minute. Do we need to, let's move to approve.
Oh.
Make a motion to approve the professional services agreement between the town and AECOM. I don't know how you say that.
Just ACOM.
AECOM?
Yeah.
Prior to discussion, yes. Are you making a motion?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Open for discussion? My first question is, I'm a little confused. about the time frame of this new contract. You say it's with a different company, but it's covering the same period. So if I understand this, the old contract was supposed to go through June, and we're starting up with these new company in April. So is this just a 3-month contract, or help me understand what we're signing or approving?
It's the current, I say previous, but it's actually a current contract will expire, or it terminates next week. But the way we developed that contract was like this one, 30 days notice of termination, but it's a continuous term. So until one of us cancels, they would provide our service. So when they notified us that they wouldn't have the personnel to provide the GIS, we talked about, how they could provide that service. They can't, so we put it out for a RFQ. And that's where it brought us to this. But there's no gap to fill in. We're just terminating that contract and starting this new one.
And this is ongoing, then? It's not for a certain period of time?
Correct.
Now, what about any price increases or anything down the road? How's that going to?
If you look at one of the attachments, they have the fee schedule on there for their personnel, which is typical. And I think there's a blurb at the end that talks about how they can provide an increase annually. That's part of the agreement.
Okay.
They can increase their costs, but they have to notify us in writing beforehand.
All right.
And these costs are comparable to the costs that we had from the previous firm, so there really isn't a big cost difference there. And in fact, the same person that was with the previous firm is now with this firm, so we're not even going to be changing personnel. It's going to be the same person.
That was going to be my question right there was,
Yes,
what are we losing?
Continuity.
Yeah.
No, in fact, we're not losing that talent, and I'll tell you, Carrie, who was our previous GIS consultant, will be our new GIS consultant with this contract if we approve it. But also with this firm is the GIS consultant we had before Carrie, who is just as good or better, will also be on this team. So we're actually gaining,
More expertise.
yeah, a lot more expertise with
Great.
with
Great.
Robbie. Yeah,
So is this, basically, is it billed monthly?
monthly. Yes.
Okay, and so some months you might use them more than others?
Correct.
So in the end, it's a 40,000?
I think we originally budgeted 10,000, and then if you remember, we came back because we went over the 10,000, and we budgeted another 30. So
Okay.
in total, we budgeted 40. I'm not attaching a number to this. I think Alice and I talked about 30 or 40 for the next year, but
Okay,
again, it's going to scale, so
Yeah.
it may not be that. We're not going to go over whatever we allocate. If we
Okay.
need to come back and
Yeah.
reallocate money,
We'll
then
know
we'll
about
do
it.
that. But
Okay.
I didn't want to attach a number to this because I'm not sure exactly how this is going to play out next year. And we may have a demand for GI service for something we don't know about, so it may increase. I
Okay.
don't know.
All right.
It's fine.
Part of the budget process as well. We'll have a line item in there for GIS services, and we'll budget how much we're planning on spending for next year. So that way we can track, how much we have available throughout the
Okay,
year.
all right.
Any other questions?
I have none.
If no further questions, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, ordinances. Public hearing and second reading for ordinance 16-27, an ordinance to amend the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 4, Section 20, parking and loading to provide for new requirements.
We discussed this item actually back on the February 9th meeting, and basically what this ordinance amendment involves is essentially looking at parking more efficiently and giving applicants more flexibility and the Planning Commission more flexibility in how we make smarter decisions on allocating surface parking so that we're trying to minimize wasted space, wasted valuable real estate. We looked at some photographs at the last meeting where sizable portions of very expensive real estate were being underused. So what we're trying to do is think about parking more intelligently and provide for ordinance language that will accomplish that. There was one suggestion at the first reading last month to eliminate a sentence in one of the sections, Section A4, and that's the section that talks about increasing or reducing required parking. and that sentence has been removed from the ordinance. And I don't believe there were any other suggestions at that time. The ordinance otherwise is the same as it was on first reading, and the staff recommends approval on second reading.
I move to approve ordinance 16-27 on second reading.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
None.
All right, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item. This is the first reading for ordinance 16-28, ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code Title 14, Chapter 6 of the Farragut Architectural Design Standards to provide for Appendix A being an adopted color palette.
This item, actually I had an error in the write-up, and I apologize for that, but we've actually discussed this item at 3, not 2 Planning Commission meetings. We've kind of discussed it to death. We started in November and also talked about this in December before the Planning Commission actually took action in January. This was one of the items that in trying to implement the design standards, the design standards have really been, I think personally, a tremendous success. We've already, with site plans that have come before the Planning Commission since March of 2015, we've been able to work with applicants to get, I think, much better products as a result of having the standards in place, both in terms of how buildings look and how the sites are arranged. I think we'll probably have the nicest looking O'Reilly's Auto Parts probably maybe in the country. So, and we appreciate them working with us on that. But there's always going to be some things that you run into when you're trying to make decisions and implement certain standards or ordinances. And one of those things that's come before the Planning Commission has been kind of a little bit of a difficult thing for them to deal with is colors, particularly accent colors on buildings. We've had a couple of site plans that have come before us where the commissioners really didn't like the colors that were presented, but we really didn't feel like we had sufficient language that was objective enough to steer them in a different direction. So what this ordinance is trying to do is to add some predictability for both an applicant and the Planning Commission by one of the things the staff suggested is, well, if you've got concerns with colors, why don't we just consider adopting a very broad range of colors, a color palette. Now, lots of communities do that as part of their design standards. And that way, when an applicant comes to visit with the staff for pre-application, they know on the front end what color palette we're looking at for their building and accent colors. So there's no uncertainty, and they don't get to the Planning Commission meeting and there's this long discussion over somebody's blue or somebody's yellow or somebody's red or, you know, those kinds of things. So what we're trying to do, again, is to make that decision-making process a little more fluid for both the Commission and the applicants. One of the objectives when we were trying to develop this color palette, and we got feedback from the Planning Commission, they took out some colors, maybe added a couple of colors. We wanted to have a range of colors in the major color groups that was very comprehensive and gave applicants a lot of choices. We're not trying to be overly restrictive. We simply are trying to take the main colors that you see and develop a very broad list of kind of earth tone versions of those colors. So that's what Appendix B that the Planning Commission recommended for approval contains, and that's part of Ordinance 1628. Another element of the Planning Commission's approval was to provide some more objective language as it relates to the use of color bands. And just this is our color palette. It was in your packet, and you can see there's a lot of different color options for an applicant. The color bands is something that we ran into problems with, and what we're trying to do with the language that we are proposing to include for Design Guideline 2.2 establishes some very concrete objective parameters for the use of color bands on projects, so that you don't end up with a nice masonry building and then somebody puts huge swaths of you know, out of character colors that can compromise the appearance of an otherwise very attractive structure. So that's what that language is that's included in Ordinance 1628 that the Planning Commission asked for the staff to add when they recommended approval in January. So that's kind of an overview. Essentially what we're trying to do is to lessen subjectivity, give applicants a lot of choices, but also help them understand on the front end what the town's expectations are in terms of their buildings. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
So I think the objective here is to eliminate the more lurid
Did you want to make
shades.
a motion first?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
maybe the brighter, yeah, the brighter colors. Again, we're trying to encourage kind of largely masonry buildings, and we are trying to encourage applicants to not compromise those with things that they do for their accent. And that's all that this ordinance is really trying to do, and it's trying to give the Planning Commission some very objective parameters that they can use when somebody comes before them, that they can point to, instead of just referring to the current language, which is fairly subjective. And it puts the Planning Commission and, frankly, the applicant in kind of an uncomfortable situation. To me, I'm trying to help the applicants because I'm trying to give them predictability early on in the process.
Thank you.
Before we go
Alderman Pavlin raised a point of order that we need a motion on the table
Correct.
before we proceed with discussion. So would you like to make that motion?
Move to approve Ordinance 16-28 on first reading.
Second?
All right, now we'll have some discussion. Any?
I would agree with Mark's. This has been, this was a difficult process we went through.
Oh, I'm sure it's so
we
subjective.
I struggled with the banding, that we didn't have a defined height for the banding, and I'm thinking, okay, is that really banding, or is that was bigger than banding to me. We were frustrated because the color was, how do you define that? One person might think that's a pretty color. We struggled. We spent a lot of time on this. So that's kind of what the root of this was. We've struggled with color. We've struggled with banding, and it takes up a lot of time in the.
Have there been a lot of businesses wanting wider bands than 18 inches? I'm just curious.
Well, we really haven't had that many issues with it. We've had a couple of projects where this could help the town, I think.
This was the big one. This particular project was the one that we really struggled with, was what is banding? How do we define banding? So.
This appears to be a more muted color palette. I sit through the Planning Commission meetings and as a just to learn, and this, you did have a tough time with it, but this is more of a muted color palette than what, well, for instance, this one here.
Go ahead. State your name and address.
Robert Hill, 11504 Mountain View Road. Mark, does this color palette solve the problem that we had occasionally in the past with corporate colors? And when corporations come in with a standard color pattern for their structures, and we've almost always had to argue about that.
We've learned from working with national corporations that there is some latitude in what they can do.
So you can make, with this, you can make a
what
decision
we tried to do with
in
the
their
color
favor
palette
easier?
Yeah, what we tried to do with the color palette was to have enough options in each of the major color groups so that somebody could get something very close to what their corporate color is on most locations.
Will this lessen the number of things that have to go to the VRB for approval?
Well, the Planning Commission basically has the role of reviewing
So
this
that-
currently.
that
And that's the way it,
keeps the action in the Planning Commission and.
yes, sir.
And because.
Yeah, because they're already looking at the other elements of the building.
Yeah.
And so this is just a natural extension of that.
Okay, well, I remember that we used to have vital arguments about things like that, and you remember those too. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy with that if you solve that problem.
Well, we are improving our approach to dealing with that, I think.
Okay.
Whether we've solved the problem remains to be seen.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Take stock in a year and see if it's working.
That's right.
Or less.
Yeah,
Any other
Fun.
questions? I'm sorry. Any other questions or?
Yeah,
comments?
my 10th grade English teacher, Mrs. Davis, would be very disappointed if I didn't point out that the language in paragraph E, color bands used in buildings, the second line, 10% of the affected facade segment, that should be affected with an A instead of effected with an E, if I'm not mistaken.
You're probably right. We took that language actually from, as planners do, we steal things from other communities. But I looked at that myself because I'm kind of big on grammar, and I didn't really think that was correct either. I'll double check and I'll make sure whatever that is correct.
We'll contact the high school English department and see what's correct on that.
The Harbrace World
That's right.
Handbook of the English Language, I think.
That's a good thought because I did think the same thing when I looked at that word.
Pretty confident.
Do we need to amend the motion to include that, or is that?
I think we can handle
Well,
it.
I think
Yeah.
Just, we would notice.
And sure, yeah, I'll check and make sure.
We can handle that.
Whatever the correct spelling, that may be the correct spelling. It very well could be, but it looked odd to me as well. And I would have, if I were writing it on my own, and a lot of ordinances I do write on my own, by the way. I don't want to tell you I rob for everything, but I would have probably used an A.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think A is the correct, grammatically correct. Well, I make a motion that we approve the ordinance number 1628 to provide a color palette for specific parameters of colors as they relate to buildings and the implementation of architectural design standards.
Second.
We already had a motion on the floor.
Okay.
No further discussion. We are going to vote on the first motion that was seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Yes.
We'll get there.
Get it.
I like it.
All right.
Next.
Item, Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Just a couple updates, really legislative updates. One is Mr. Palmer and I went to Nashville yesterday and was able to visit with several of the legislators around the state talking about various issues that are affecting local government across our state. So it was a good day on the Hill and a good opportunity to let them know kind of some of the issues that we're concerned with on some of the bills coming through. And then also on March 20th and 21st, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will be going up to Nashville for a TML Day on the Hill and have an opportunity to do the same thing. So we'll have a couple of times here, 2 weeks in a row, or a couple weeks in apart to visit with our legislative delegation and work on things that are important to Farragut. So
you soften them up for us, huh?
we'll see what happens.
All right, and
Have to report.
okay, and Town Attorney's Report. He is not here tonight, so if there's no other business, I hear a motion to.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.